Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Netflix Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, based on the book A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket, whose real name is Daniel Handler. Season 1, Episode 7.
I'm not sure if you can top that for the last episode.
I don't think I can. I don't think I can add anything else into it. Season 1, Episode 7, it's called The Miserable Mill, Part 1. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. And, of course, they end up at the mill here that they were off to go to at the end of the last episode. And we follow how they end up in there, what happens in there. They get put to work. The mill has this policy of putting trespassers to work in the mill. But there's a little bit more to it than that. But it's very over the top. They're basically
slaves.
Slaves, yeah. They're basically slaves. They work for vouchers instead of money, and they get gum for lunch instead of actual lunch. And the lunch break's 5 minutes long as well.
Yeah.
But the big thing about this episode, I think, because I enjoyed this episode, or I was enjoying this episode, and I thought it wasn't as funny as a lot of the previous ones. There were some good moments, but it was mostly a lot more plot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wasn't really complaining because it did make it feel different in that it wasn't just to go to a new relative and how does Count Olaf show up. Because even the fact that we see Olaf getting there himself, not dressed up
it's
yet.
different, isn't it?
Yeah, everything about it felt very different, and that was good. It shook things up a little bit for this final two-parter. But the big thing about this episode, though, is I think the pretty good twist.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And it occurred to me because I seen someone who'd read the book say, or who had maybe read the books a while ago, say something like, "I don't remember the parents being this overtly alive at the time."
I didn't particularly remember it either, but I was just like, "Oh, I'm kind of foggy." So maybe
yeah. And even it could have been something that was there later, but they've introduced it earlier to build up stuff.
Well, they've definitely done that in general with a lot of the
spy
secret
stuff.
society stuff. Yeah.
But so you go along with it, and for me, I've not read the book, so I'm going along with it. But they hit us with this twist, which actually kind of hit.
Yeah.
When you see it's actually these rich three kids that we've seen in one of the cutaways earlier when Lemony Snicket was explaining something about getting up in the morning, and we see it's those kids and they're so happy, and then it cuts back to the Baudelaires and they're just standing there and hopeful, even though they don't even think it could be their parents because they still think their parents are dead.
Yeah, but they hope it's someone coming to rescue them.
Yeah, and you just know it's hopeless, and you're like, oh, I feel bad.
Yeah, and it raises because obviously they're still part of the secret society in general.
Yeah, obviously there's still ties to the secret society because people have talked to them about it. Stuff's been brought up with obviously Olaf and everyone else around them. So there's still a connection there, but it seems like their parents might actually be dead now.
Yeah, which begs the question: they must be two other people in the photo because we can see Will and Anko's mothers in the photo.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it must be two of the others who are in the photo, which means that there's probably still going to run into these like Kobe Smulders and Will Arnett at some point.
They must do. Yeah.
And they'll find out. Maybe they'll eventually live with them at the end of the story. That's where they end up setting up shop.
I think it's extremely smart now that I think about it that when they're in the credits, it's always just been the mother and the father.
Yeah, it's not their names. Because that's the other thing as well, is we finally learn... I don't actually remember it, but we learn his name, the dad's name.
Bertrand.
There you go. Because
which actually made me think, and I think this is comic books have trained me to do this, the alliteration of the the names, the Bertrand Baudelaire.
Elias?
No. Oh. I'm thinking Beatrice is the mother.
Beatrice Baudelaire. Yeah, you're right. You might be right.
I think that's just the comics training me for that alliteration of names that is just like, oh, that name's been around.
I can see it. It's done really well though, because it's the same door. They have this ridiculous yellow door for the visitors area. This mill, a mill would have a visitors area.
Well, that's the thing, because when they were knocking at the door, like with the parents, I was like, okay, so they're not at the mill. But then it cuts to them, like, the very fancy door, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe they are on the other side.
Yeah, it's the exact same door. They did that intentionally. They made the door the exact same, and then Lemony Snicket just sort of pulls the camera over, which again, a nice little touch that the camera pans with him, but he looks like he's the one actually pulling it.
Yeah, it's that sort of like documentary thing.
And he's like talking about how sad this was, and it turns out the phone call to see if they were at the mill was just Mr. Poe, and he crushes it out. Well, I'll try the next one. That's the little joke at the end.
Yep.
But so I gotta admit that twist hit harder.
That was actually really good.
That twist hit a little bit harder emotionally than I think I need to give this show credit for as sort of light-hearted as it typically is, and as how stupid the humour can be. and how whimsical it can be with a lot of stuff, the emotion is kind of there.
It is. When it needs to be, it's there.
Yeah. So, I think James Newton Howard's score helps a lot with that. But
of course.
But nah, I think it was there. I think it was a solid little twist, and it was a nice big middle of the finale, because it was a 2-part finale essentially.
Yeah.
Sort of reveal. So that is really cool and really exciting. So, yeah, other main plots here. Obviously, there's a building that's got the eye logo on it, and an optometrist lives in there, and it's the ex-girlfriend of Olaf, as it turns out. And it's fun stuff. Actually, my favourite laugh of the episode, and again, this was a bit lighter on the laughs, this one, but my favourite laugh was when Olaf goes to the door, and there's a whole lot of good banter when he's like trying to talk him way into the door, and she's on the other side, and she's pretending it's not actually her, but they both kind of notice each other, kind of thing. Yeah. But when she opens the door and it's still in the chain, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I apologise. I feel bad for whatever it is I did." And she's like, "You left me to drown." He's like, "Under the bridge."
Is there water under the bridge?
Water under the bridge. He's like, "Yeah, that's where you left me to drown." Water under the bridge cracked me up. That was definitely the biggest laugh, because there was no henchman in this one.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming
the foreman.
The foreman was
the foreman. Yeah, the foreman actually might be. You're right, but
with the big massive hand metal glove things.
True. You're right, but it just but you didn't really see him. There was no humor.
No, there was no
them.
overt humor from them,
and there was no humor from a lot of the others. Interestingly, the Sir's partner, Charles, yeah, he I recognised him. He was in the best episode. See that new X-Files season, start of last year. He was in that the Weirman episode. Because for the first half I was like, I know him from something.
It was bothering me the entire episode.
I was like, where have I seen this actor before? And it was that episode of the X-Files from last year.
I remember it now that you've said it.
He was the Weirman.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I remember this guy. He's got such a unique sort of look and sound to him. I knew I'd seen him.
It's kind of got that upbeat chirpiness in his voice.
Yeah. I suppose I think if I'm going to complain about the episode, I think the humour that was meant to be there was from this this really, really upbeat guy in the mill.
It wasn't really landing that much, was it?
It wasn't, because everyone else was hating everything. Oh, this is terrible. I hate Log Day. And then this optimist was like, I love Log Day, and he was optimistic about everything. And I don't think it landed as well as everything else has done.
It was
so far.
fine. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like annoying or bad.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it wasn't.
But it was just not particularly funny.
It wasn't off-putting. It just the humour wasn't quite working, and when it came to him, a small joke I did appreciate though was the transition between Lemony Snicket saying, "Oh yes, so people can be awful." For example, I once had an awful experience with a refrigerator repairman. I wonder whatever happened to him, and that's when we see father pull over that guy, and then after it's happened and we cut back to them and they've got rid of him, they mention, "Oh, he was a really unpleasant refrigerator repairman." Yeah. Which, by the way, really over the top effect as Kobe Smulders does this flip to tackle.
Oh my god, it was amazing. It comes out of nowhere. She jumps over. I thought, she's going for a kick, cool. And then it's just like a double flip or something.
Actually, do you know what I really like? This was, I guess this is kind of a joke, but it was near the start when he's explaining the difference between an optimist and an optometrist. And at the time, you don't realise there's going to actually be an optometrist in it. You just think he's using it as a comparison. Just don't confuse it with this. And it cuts to what I would consider like a horror movie-esque couple of quick shots of an optician's office.
Yeah.
And it shows you like all the different stuff and the equipment. And it cuts back to him and he's just looking dead straight at the camera. It's like, yeah, you can't mistake the difference or something like that. And but the way he looked horrified when it cut back to him, and I think it's the first time that he himself is overtly made me laugh.
Yeah, it was like the way when he started talking about how doctors are not necessarily your friends. And anyone who's been to one knows that. And it's like, that's good. It was almost,
because I didn't, obviously it ended up that Georgina ended up being, that's what she was, but more than that as well, actually. But at the time, I honestly thought it was just a random cutaway gag that meant nothing, but that made it funnier to me. I was almost disappointed when there was actually an optometrist, because I thought it was I thought it was really funny that it was just a random mention of an optometrist, and then we get this quick, like, as if it's a deep fear of Lemony Snicket.
Yeah.
But
that said, I like that there's an optometrist in the eye building.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thematically it works, because the whole thing, we've had all these spy glasses and binoculars and all this other stuff, so that coming, again, it feels like a finale thing, especially with meeting someone that Olaf is connected to in a different way than his henchman. It's like a person from his past. Again, it feels like a finale thing where we're opening up the world a little bit and we're getting a bigger sense of.
Yeah, and it's the first time since like the first couple of episodes that he's been out of costume, really.
Yeah,
for any extended period of time, anyway.
Yeah, and we also obviously early on in the episode we learn that their parents burned down the town, Poultryville, which I love that name, by the way. Poultryville's great.
It's a good name.
But then, of course, we find out later that this is actually just a ruse. That the Sir is just blaming it on them, so that presumably Georgina, but I'm not sure.
That was the implication, because they say that we've got to deal with her. I think they said.
Yeah, she basically paid or whatever to keep the mill open, but the condition was that they would blame the fire.
Yeah.
On them, so that's that. So that's so yeah. Obviously, that's opening stuff up. We'll get a lot more of them. We only see Olaf in his female costume right at the end. We see him blurry at one point, but we see him right at the end. But of course, the big thing that happens from all this is Klaus breaks his glasses, or I say he breaks his. The foreman is horrible to him and steps on his glasses. He gets taken to the optometrist, and instead of fixing his glasses, she brainwashes him.
Yes, hypnotism.
Because we got a hint of it earlier on when all the other workers all stood up and said that.
Yeah, it was when they said, "Oh, why don't you leave?" And they all stood up and went, "This is our home. This is," or whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever their key phrase was.
All in sync. It was cool.
And Klaus actually snaps out of it. Violet manages to break him out of it. But at the end of the episode, when the door opens and it's not the parents, it's actually Olaf in his outfit and Georgina. He says a trigger phrase. He gives them new glasses and says a trigger thing, and he gets rehypnotized. So we end the episode in a pretty sort of down place where they seem no one's coming to rescue them. Mr. Poe has no idea where they are. He's still been hypnotized and can be controlled. So it feels like it feels like the ante's been up for this final story in the season.
And like I said, while it was light on the humor, I really enjoyed what it did with the plot and advanced the overall stuff. It was a big one for that. Yeah.
And like I say, that's definitely had the biggest emotional beat of the show so far. So it's hard to complain much. One small criticism, and I'm sure this has been true of the whole season, but I feel like I noticed it a little bit more in this one, is occasionally Sonny's head was very clearly CG'd onto the body. And I don't know what it is about this location, if it's maybe the lighting differences that's making it more obvious. But there was just a couple of times when Violet was holding her, you could sort of tell they'd CG'd the head on, so that maybe it was just a doll she was holding in the scenes.
Well, I think that's what it is for most of it. There's just a doll and it's CG'd.
Yeah.
But I do think it was more noticeable. I wonder if it was kind of they were getting towards the end and ran out of time.
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's not been that noticeable for the most part.
It hasn't. It's mostly been fairly good. There's been the odd bit here and there, but mostly.
We've mentioned how the arms and the card bit in the first couple of episodes was a little bit noticeable and stuff, but for the most part it's been pretty on point. I think it was just a couple of times in this episode where it stood out to me and I'm like, oh, that's a little bit rougher. But there you go.
It's not the end of the world. It doesn't ruin anything. It's not. But it's worth pointing out.
In fact, while I'm criticising effects, I thought they were... See when at the start of the episode when they get to the mill and they're looking at they have that moment where they hold the photo up and then they pull it down and it's the same mill. When it cuts to the reverse shot looking at the two of them, there's a forest behind them. I don't know why, but for some reason that's a really bad green screen shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because I'm like, you couldn't have just shot them in front of a forest. Like, it doesn't have to be the same location.
There's so much forest in the episode in general.
Yeah, like you couldn't have just get a shot in front of one of them. Maybe it was a time-saving thing, I don't know. Maybe, but it looks particularly bad. It really looks like a green screen shot.
It does.
So, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe they were rushing to finish some of the effects here in the last couple of episodes to make the deadline.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only thing I think of as to why it's noticeably worse than other previous episodes.
Yeah. Or maybe they were saving a lot of money for the finale. Maybe there's a lot of stuff next week.
Could be that, yeah.
Could be. But, no, that's the episode. That's where we leave off. So cool. That's episode 7. We will be back with the finale later tonight. It will be sometime after Sherlock, which is going up tonight, so it will be fairly late-ish, but we will definitely have it up tonight.
It is coming.
Under no circumstances will we not get the finale up tonight.
I know we've said this every night so far, but this time it's true.
Yeah, we sound reliable. But no, we will. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below, what you think of the twist, because I guess that's the biggest talking point here. And yeah, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Help us out. It helps us out. And I am forgetting how to speak. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.